your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
He's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. Chris, a rarity, a road trip to Stillwater, ending in a Texas Tech win. We'll talk some Texas Tech hoops as well, as they made a trip up to New York and split a pair up there. And technically, as we wrap back around football, technically there is still a chance he could play in a Big 12 championship. Jokes, kind of, but mathematically not eliminated. Should make for a good week of college football coming up, and Turkey Week. So lots to get into here. But how are we doing today, Level?
Well, as we get going here, Cantex Roofing, thank you to those folks. Certainly thankful for a lot of things, but thankful for you, Woodman. You do a good job with us in the radio broadcast. It's a thankless job. You taking care of me on the coach's show all year. I was thankful I got to see my daughter, who I hadn't seen in many, many months. This past weekend and all that stuff. But yeah, this is always a fun week, and family football and all that kind of stuff. So certainly, and it's obviously much better to go into it off of a big win in Stillwater, which has not been an easy place to play for Texas Tech. It's kind of been a house of horrors in many ways. I think you're what now 3 and let's say like 3-11 all time now. I think
you're
is right. Yeah. 2001, 2018, and now 2024 are the 3 wins. But mainly because Oklahoma State's always usually pretty good. They're not this year, but boy, they gave you all that they had on Saturday. And it's funny you mentioned that about, because what is it technically like a 4.3 or 4.6% chance or something that you make it to the title game? I mean,
yeah, it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, you have to win. Okay, and then you
Obviously.
need 3 of those 4 teams and ahead of you to lose. Unlikely to happen, but it's depending on how you look at it, I guess, because this is a better chance to make it to the title game than you really have ever had before.
Sadly, I think you're correct.
I mean, when you've just been out,
yeah,
and you still do have a chance, although slim. This is better chances than you've ever had before going into the last week. So it depends on how you view it, I guess. And you every team, yourself included, above you will look at their season and go, oh, there's that one play, one game. Yeah. And you're probably looking at it from the TCU game standpoint. Like if we'd have just, figured that out. I mean, but big picture though, speaking of the TCU game, that's the only road conference game that you lost. And that, I mean, you went 3-1 on the road in Big 12 play, that was a problem with this program. You were trying to figure out ways to win on the road, and that was kind of one of the things. And then you go out and win 3 out of 4 on the road, and yet you've just dropped a couple of home games. So that's why we're having this conversation. But had you gone undefeated on the road, we're probably having a bit of a different conversation now. And I think Joey has now got the 3rd straight Big 12 winning record.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time
in Big 12 history. I know that.
Is it? Okay. And maybe since Spike. And I don't know if he did it in the Big 12, but maybe it spilled over from
I think it was 95 to 97. So you did it in the Southwest Conference spilling over.
Yeah,
I believe that was it, because it's something Leach had never done.
Right, and again, the Big 12 has morphed and changed into a bunch of different versions of itself and all that, but it's still it's still something to hold on to, and it's signs of progress. It's not the progress that anybody wants. You ultimately want to be in Arlington and you want to win it. That's what Joey has stated and all those things. But I'm just glad we made it through Saturday, man, because I'm not sure my heart or my blood pressure or all the things you just couldn't get them stopped. You just could not get them stopped. And if not for an errant high snap, you just don't know. We could still be playing. I don't know. But wild,
Yeah.
wild game. I watched the Cowboy game,
Oh my gosh.
on Sunday.
Speaking of wild.
Yes, and I'm like, this is the damnedest game I've seen since yesterday.
Since yesterday.
As I'm watching the Cowboy game on a Sunday, I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, that's
sports,
funny.
man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What a weekend it was. But you know, these are another one. You don't apologize for wins in any way. You couldn't stop them, but it just continues into that category of morphing into whatever type of game it is. And we've seen this over the last 3 years consistently. If it's a low scoring game, you're going to play that style of football. If it's a shootout, you'll get into a shootout and you have the ability to do so. So it was very resembling of some yesteryears, the 2000 to 2009 era of an old school shootout in Stillwater. But you ended up on the right side of it, and that's something that, as we've talked about, just hasn't happened a lot. Even if it is a bad Oklahoma State team, you lost to a bad Oklahoma State team in was that '05, right? And in Gundy's
Yep.
first year there. So you're able to find a way to get it done. And as we've talked about leading up to this level, whether you get everything to fall your way for that Big 12 championship bid or not, and obviously very slim chances of that, you get to 8 wins, and that's the target at this point. You get to 8 regular season wins with a win this weekend, and that's clear progress from where you've been.
Yeah, and we have I think you realize you've scored more points than anybody in the Big 12 conference this season to this
Yep.
point, and everybody's played the same amount of games. You've
Yep.
also given up more points than anybody in the Big 12. And at some point, if you want to get over the hump and really, and you're just this close, but you've got to be better on defense. That's just you can't keep living like this and then
Yeah.
try to get to get to where you want to go by giving up this many explosive plays and all those things. So that's just because I mean Oklahoma State had been pretty not bad on offense. They've got some dudes now, Ollie Gordon and Brennan Presley and the Stribling kid, and they started. This was a true freshman quarterback that did this to you. But yeah, getting to the you figure out a way to get it done, and you just didn't play your best in some aspects, but you still get a win, and now you're going to go try to do it again against a West Virginia team this weekend that you got a lot of things working against you from the
Hmm.
in that Neil's coaching for his job, that staff coaching for their jobs. You've got an 11 a.m. kick, which is not conducive to a boisterous crowd. You've got Thanksgiving
Right.
weekend with no students in town. Yeah, so I don't know what kind of environment you'll get, but you got senior day and all those things, and you got a team that is going to run it right at you with a couple of C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White, and then a running quarterback that's run for nearly 700 yards this year in Garrett Green.
Yeah.
So buckle up because you're going
And
to see a
and
lot of run game.
And that wasn't the problem for the majority of the season with this defense is the run game. It's been the passing defense for the majority of the season, but you suffered 2 key injuries on Saturday against an Ollie Gordon, and it really gashed your defense, losing DB Carroll and Quincy Ledet for the game for really 3 quarters of the game on Saturday in Stillwater.
Yeah, that didn't help. And you're out there playing with your second and third team guys. James Hanson even got a sack. We had not seen
Hmm.
him most of this year. And I don't know what it'll. I have my doubts that Quincy and DB will be able to play on Saturday. They're both ankle issues. It sounds like is what it looked like to me. And
Yeah.
If they're high ankles, then forget about it. They're not going to be available, in the bowl game or anything like that. Or excuse me, in the regular season game, final regular season game.
Sure.
And so, yeah, we'll kind of see what we get, but yeah, you just couldn't. I mean, they're running. I mean, and I'll say this: I thought you get to this point in the season, and some teams are playing for different things than others. Oklahoma State, I kind of hope that when you get up 14-0,
Yeah.
you kind of hope that they'll check it in, or that they'll just go, "Hey, man, we don't really want to be here today. Here's you an easy one." And boy, they pulled out. I mean, onside kicks, trick plays, special packages for Ollie Gordon running quarterback for a whole series.
Yeah.
He's throwing the ball. I mean, they tried everything they could to try to beat you. And to your credit, you didn't let that happen. And it took a block extra point. You took advantage of a couple of high snaps that they had. You
Hmm.
intercepted the freshman quarterback at the end of the game, but you just kept on scoring and you kept on scoring, and you did it in a variety of different ways. And you ran a lot of tempo. You ran like, let me make sure I'm right here, but let's see. Yeah, you ran about 24 more plays than they did, and your total yardage is just barely more, and that's just kind
Hmm.
of how many. I mean, they were averaging about 8 yards a play was Oklahoma State, and
Ouch.
it's hard to win that way. It just is, but
I found a way.
you figured out a way to
Yep.
do it. So yeah.
Well, let's get these out of the way as far as the officiating stuff level. Got a couple of email ones. There's some from Twitter. Mark, Kelly, kind of combining everything. So Kelly asked, what was the explanation from the officials about the timeout in the fourth quarter? And Mark says, aside from Big 12 conference grading officials, what can and should Brett Yormark do to address what happened across the league? It was horrendous. Too much money in these games. And oh, he adds, glad you got bragging rights in your household level.
And my son may end up going there too. I'm not sure what he's just trying to get away from home, and I get it. But my kids they know they wear tech stuff all the time.
Yeah.
My daughter wears tech stuff up in Stillwater all the time too. So she still loves her dad, thankfully. But she was actually upset for me 2 years ago when I went up there and
Mhm.
Oklahoma State won. And then this time we didn't play them last year, but this time she was excited for me. So but yeah,
That's good.
no, it's all good, man. Um, yeah, the officiating. I mean, it's like it's so much easier to point this stuff out after a win too, and easier for us to talk about, and it doesn't make it look like we're.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like sour grapes in that
But
sense.
like
Yeah.
here's your prime example from Saturday. There's a second left on the clock in Tempe, Arizona, and the
Oh
crowd
yeah.
has stormed the field, and there's no penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I have a variety of issues here. I'll just go on a bit of a rant here, so just bear with me.
Get after it.
The kick catch interference is a just terrible call. There's no fair catch. He gets smoked, and then he gets up and you allow him to run for 70 yards, which they're kind of trained to do, but it's like he should have been down. There's no penalty, whatever. Then there was a holding. There was a phantom holding on, I guess they called it on Mohorn, I think.
They did.
And it potentially is grounding. Maybe they're saying, well, the holding is why there was nobody in the space. I don't know, but that's a bad call. But what we're going to talk about here is that Oklahoma State got a fourth timeout. And my issue is not that as much as that they got a fourth timeout because they did, and then it's just shrouded in secrecy. My biggest problem is, and I think college basketball has started to figure this out, and that's
I
why I
Yeah,
think you're gonna start to see this in football.
need
The
to.
biggest travesty that you have is that nobody tells you anything. Like in basketball, when I'm doing TV, if there's a controversial sequence or they go to the monitor, they will come over and say, "Here's what happened." Now they get on the microphone
Yep.
and you may not like it, but they tell the crowd, Here's what we have. Like one of the officials is doing this.
Right,
It's kind
right.
of the NBA model.
It's a smart thing to do.
But and you may not agree with it or you may not understand it, but at least you get an explanation. Like in this case, nobody got any explanation, including the head coach. There's this stoppage in the game with 153 left. Taj's helmet, or there was maybe some tape hanging off. There was some issue with his equipment, and they're saying he's got to come out of the game. Well, who stopped the clock? Okay, we all just were under the assumption, well, surely Oklahoma State called timeout,
Hmm.
which I guess they didn't because they never announced it. Well, then they go so far as to take it off the scoreboard and take their timeouts from 2 to 1. And we're like, okay, we still don't have an announcement, but we're kind of like, okay, well, they call timeout. Makes all the sense. And because the timeout's played, Taj can come back in the game. Well, then they put it back up on the board, and there's lots of we're about to start play, then we're going to stop it, we're going to start it again, oh, we're going to stop it. And there's lots of conversations. Joey was losing his mind, and understandably so. And then he finally has to burn a timeout so he can put Taj Brooks in the game. And yet then why? But why was the clock stopped? Originally, and nobody tells you. Just get on the microphone and tell everybody, here's what we have. But when you can't, not only was the crowd or those of us that are broadcasting this thing not told anything, the
Hmm.
head coach really isn't given an explanation. And that's the problem, because what that leads to is it makes it look like you don't know what in the heck you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just mismanaged.
And
And it, yeah.
my issue level is that how many times when you see something completely out of whack like that, you see the white hat go over to the head coach, right? The white hat stayed away from Coach McGuire the entire time. He would not go over there to explain himself and give that. Joey McGuire's having to sit there and hear from the line judges the entire time and just what they think is going on instead. And even with all of this, it is a really bad look because the actual ruling itself, even if it is an official timeout, which it is for Taj Brooks' helmet coming off, you're still supposed to wind the clock after that. I went back and looked at it. You roll the clock if it's outside of 1 minute play in either half. You roll the clock after that. So Oklahoma State should have been forced to use that timeout or running
And
clock.
instead they actually put more time on the
Yeah,
clock.
155 instead of
Yeah,
153.
they're
So
like, hey, well, the clock operator put 2 more seconds. I'm like, wait a second.
it
So
was
they got a free timeout. They got more time. I mean, it's like, what are we? And you, as you know, unfortunately, like this was still very much in doubt.
yep.
Like, you're, and here's another one. Ollie Gordon throws not one but two punches,
Two
and
of
you
them.
get the
Yep.
penalty,
Yep.
and that's supposed to be an automatic ejection.
And you know who really is partially at fault in a lot of this is your replay official. The faceless guy we never see. He is a problem because he is supposed to chime in when there's a timeout issue. He's supposed to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this is what's going on here. You need to take this timeout off, or you're supposed to wind the clock, or something like that." And then the Ollie Gordon thing, that's an automatic. He's supposed to buzz down and say, "Hey, we think there's a punch thrown. We need to look at this longer, and this was warranting an ejection." So white hat, entire officiating crew, but the replay official is just as much as at fault as anybody. And the mismanagement and having mismanagement like this 2 weeks in a row in Texas Tech
Yeah.
games, not to mention all the other stuff going around where you're letting Shadur Sanders shove a ref in the back and no penalty, and the Arizona State thing going on. And
It's
it's
just,
just,
yeah. So they're going to have to get at there, and I say this because I try not to get on high school officials much.
I'm with you.
There's a lot of bad calls in high school games, but they're not paid very much at all.
Sure. Sure.
And it's a very difficult job. I don't, but college officials are paid very, very well.
Their
They go
side
through,
job is more
yeah,
than most people make
yeah.
out there as a full-time job.
They go through a lot of training,
Yep.
all the things, and I just think it's got to be better, man. And I don't, but I want more transparency. I just think you just need to be better. There's just too much at stake for a lot of people. there's too much money flowing through this deal for
Yep.
for it to be that bad. And I get that this was probably one of the worst Big 12 crews on any given Saturday. It's an ESPN Plus game. It's a game that,
Right.
whatever, but still it's just poor. And it's just got to be better. But tell everybody what's going on. Take control. And this just wasn't what happened on Saturday at the end when it's just nip and tuck. And you can't tell me that game doesn't mean a lot to Texas Tech, and you certainly can't tell me it doesn't mean anything to Oklahoma State either, regardless of the record, because the way that they played the game.
Yep.
So, anyways,
So yeah,
we've talked about that enough, but that's my opinion on it, and I know you've shared yours, but it's unfortunate, and I hope that it gets better, and I hope that Brett Yormark and they come up with a better system or training or more transparency, but it's just bad,
yep.
and it's much easier for us to sit here and discuss it after you win a game than when you lose it, because I don't like the loser's limp. I think there's many things you can do in a game that, but it's
Right.
it's much easier to point out after a win than a loss. But
Right.
God dang, man. I mean,
It's simply put, it's got to be better. I mean,
yeah.
it's as simple as it is. Okay, a few more questions in this one from Trisha on Twitter. What was the argument between Coach Perry and Coach McGuire about?
Yeah, there was when they went out to go punt. I don't know if they liked the personnel group or the formation or whatever, and that's just heat of the moment. Those guys are best friends and
Yeah.
all that. But I think it had to do with let's do this. No, I'm thinking this, and then I guess they ended up getting on the same page, and I think that was on a fourth down before you punted. I think.
Hmm.
Or are you? And I'm not privy enough to know what exactly was been. I think that I'm not. I'm not too far off base. And are you trying to punt it traditionally or rugby style, or do you like the way? I mean, who knows? Because you had to know Oklahoma State was going to come after it
Right.
and all the stuff. So I think that's kind of what that. But that's normal stuff that goes on the sideline. Everything's
Sure.
fine, and yeah, there's no. But yeah, I noticed the same thing. There was a spirited conversation. But that's why I'm saying it's like this stuff matters a lot to people. You've got a lot of money and a lot of jobs. I mean, there's just a lot going into this, and you pour yourself into this stuff, and it's like, I mean, emotions are high, and that's as animated as you'll see Joey get at one of his coaches or at the official. But that's, I mean, winning on the road, winning
Yeah.
your seventh game, and it all matters at some level. So
And because of that relationship with Perry and McGuire, Perry's probably one of the few that'll bark back in a game towards Coach McGuire just because of their long time relationship with each other. But um, let's see. Mark asks, looking back on the season and the offensive line, if you knew what you know now, would you have started younger players to gain experience? Basically, take your lumps and build for next season. This line feels as bad as last year's.
I certainly understand that. I think in professional sports, you can maybe operate that way. I, I get the sentiment, but no,
Hmm.
you're trying to win every Saturday. You're trying to win every single what gives us the best chance to win right now. That's just the way this stuff is because head coaches don't have that time. Coordinators don't have that time. Position coaches don't have that time.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find an administration or a fan base out there that's like, hey, we're kind of mailing it in here a little bit. We're not going to necessarily put our best. And I'll say this: if you feel like a younger option is better and gives you the best chance that day, then by all means play the younger guy. And I think that at the end of the Colorado game, they put Jacob Ponton in because it's like, okay, he's young, but I mean, we're tired of watching
Yeah.
what was going on at left tackle in that game, and so. But I just think overall, you're no, I don't agree with that at all, unless that the younger player or players give you the best option. But you've got younger guys that just are not big enough, and they're going against grown men,
Yeah.
and everybody remembers fondly, and I do too, whenever you were rolling here on offense
Yeah.
and you had good offensive lines, almost every time you would occasionally mix in a true freshman. All those freshmen, though, that ever played as true freshmen, all were bona fide NFL guys.
Hmm.
Raven Clark, Adrian Waddle, Louis Vasquez. Those guys all had time in the league. But typically you're running out there with third year sophomores, fourth year juniors, or fifth year seniors. And that's what it was all, constructed. Or heck, when in '08 you had a 28-year-old Rylan Reed,
Ryland Reed. Yeah.
out there. And so that's what
Yeah.
but trotting out 18, 19-year-old kids that are like 280 as opposed to 315 or 320 is not really a fair fight, as much as you may like them.
Yeah.
And you also have to understand you're going to get your quarterback killed.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot that goes into what is suggested there, but like in the NFL, a lot of times, yeah, you'll see, or NBA or Major League Baseball or whatever, you'll say, man, we're just going to go with the youth. We're going to take our lumps. We're going to get our draft picks.
Yeah.
And we're kind of building. And at some point, we need to turn the page and all that stuff. But everybody's got to be on the same page there. But in college, it just doesn't work like that.
And there's probably not a bigger example of the difference in high school and college
Then
when
on
it
the
comes to
offensive
football.
line,
Offensive line right there. I mean, that's
get
the
guys
hardest
yeah.
transition there is.
I mean, Joey told us in some of the lead up to this game,
Yeah.
it's like some of our guys aren't even really shaven yet.
That's crazy.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that's just the reality of it. Like at some point, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that you would be closer to that point than you are now, but it's just, and that's why you're going to go portaling again here.
Yep.
You're going to. You're
Very
going to
soon.
spend some serious money, and you hope you choose correctly. But you're going to go portaling here, and you're going to try to acquire some sure things,
Yep.
if you will, just to allow more time in the weight room, more time to mature. And you'll see these younger guys sprinkled in next year. I think you've kind of run out of time from that standpoint, but I don't think you're ready to hand the baton off to any of these guys just yet and say, okay, because the thing about like Louis, LaRaven, LaAdrian, physically, and like I go back to Manny Ramirez, I go back to Rex Richards, which goes back to like '99,
It's going back. Yep.
which again, all NFL people. These guys were physically ready to roll at the point. And then you worry about, okay, do they mentally, are they going to bust an assignment? Are they going to, but physically the size was there. What you're dealing with on campus now, like Jacob Ponton is maybe the best young offensive lineman you've got. He's about 280-ish, maybe a little bit heavier. He's still at some level pretty skinny. He will fight you. He will play hard. I think he knows his stuff. But he's not strong enough, or doesn't have the weight. At some point, it's science.
Yeah.
It's like, three, a 310-pound D lineman coming right at me, or a 260-pound edge guy that's super fast.
Right.
You're just not there yet. And so, long answer for the question, but I'm just trying to give you some context.
Yep. I think it's good context. Level, this one comes in from Matt. It says, Level, do you think Zach Kittley had his best called game on Saturday since he's been at Tech?
I mean, maybe. I think, and people have listened to this show, I feel like that the offense, or Zach specifically, has gotten way more criticism than he deserved. I certainly understand it. I'm not suggesting in any way that the offense has been perfect by any means. I think that people point to this or that, and it almost always revolves around something relating to Zach Kittley. And it's I don't know, you can go look at the NCAA stats. I think you're scoring offense, total offense, you're around 15th to 18th nationally. You've scored more points than anybody in the Big 12 this year. Unfortunately, you've also given up more points than anybody in the Big 12 this year, as I pointed out. And but I thought Zach called a great game. Yeah, I think he's called a lot of great games. I think he's dealing with a very average offensive line, and a quarterback that I just am not as good as Barron played. I still will tell you I don't know how healthy he is. He's going to tell you he's healthy. Joey's going to tell you he's healthy. My eyes tell me a little bit differently. And then you've still been able to. He threw for 400. And you went up for over 500 yards and all these things. So I thought they did a good job on offense for sure.
Currently sitting at 12th nationally in scoring offense overall.
Okay.
So, and I believe you're top 15 in total offense as well. So, yeah,
And that doesn't tell the whole story, and I get it.
no, it
Stats
doesn't.
are for losers and all those things. I'm just trying to, again, it's about context, and I just think anytime you lose this year, it's like everybody, I've joked about this on radio interviews. It's like around here, everybody is seemingly trained to point at what's wrong with the offense and what's right with the defense.
Oh, yeah.
And I just go back to what Joey has said, man. It's like we're trying to win a championship, and you can't win a championship when you're at the bottom of the NCAA rankings and just bad in defense.
Yep.
If you were ranked this poorly defensively and you were giving up this many yards and points, but you were mixing in 3 or 4 takeaways every Saturday, you could live with it. And teams have, I mean, Oklahoma State's a prime example. TCU, the year that they played for the title game, they just mastered the takeaway. That's what, kind of, but you haven't mixed in enough of those yet. But yeah, offensively, I think it's been pretty balanced. And then I thought Zach and the offense, Barron, Taj,
Yeah.
your weapons. I thought they had a good Saturday.
Quick look at West Virginia before we move on to some basketball to close down
Well, they're
level.
going to run it right at you. I think you're dealing with, like I said, a staff that's coaching for their jobs. They're trying to get to that seventh win. They did get bowl eligible on Saturday, beating UCF. They ran for
Hmm.
over 200 yards against UCF. Garrett Green's got nearly 700 yards rushing. He's very fast as a QB. That makes me really nervous.
Yep.
CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White are going to both carry it 15 to 20 times each. I mean, they're just going to try to hammer it right at you. I would think that if you watch West Virginia, they play a three-man front and they try to keep everything in front of them. This should be a big game for Taj Brooks. If you're going to win, he will have his usual, maybe a bigger day, because that's gonna be kind of the chess match. They're gonna say, we're not gonna let you beat us over the top. We're gonna try to keep it all in front of you. So you could expect to see a lot of run game. And this may be a game theoretically that only lasts like 2.5, 3 hours, because this will be both
Yeah.
teams will run it and kind of try to shorten it a little bit and all those things. Whereas I think this past Saturday, you got into a deal where like, okay, they're going to load it up, they're going to play man
Yeah.
coverage, and we're going to run tempo. We're going to be here for 4 hours, and we were. This could be a bit more opposite, so you better be ready to tackle some Mountaineers on Saturday. It won't be anything tricky or anything like that, but that's kind of the just a quick synopsis of. And the other thing is West Virginia, like you are, they are, I believe, 3-1 on the road this year in Big 12 games. They've struggled at home, but they've won. They've won in not anything overwhelming, but they won in Tucson, they
Hmm.
won in Cincinnati, and they won in Stillwater. Now they won in Stillwater, a month, 6 weeks ago when Oklahoma State was still kind of in the mix and still trying to figure it out. Wasn't The season hadn't gone off the rails yet. They went up to Cincinnati and won a game, and then they also won in Tucson about a month ago as well. So we'll see what you get, but yeah, this won't be an easy one. I think what's Vegas got you as a 3 or 4 point favorite.
Right in there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. Close out with some basketball. Kelly asks, do you think the St. Joe's loss on Thursday hurts our seeding in March?
I mean, potentially. I think now you need to be a big St. Joe's fan.
Yep.
They looked pretty good, and it made me a bit nervous, if I'm being honest, on what it looked like because they really guarded the 3 point line well. And that kind of part was taken away from you. Then JT Toppin went crazy in that game, but you just got way too far down. But you were sloppy with the basketball. I thought
Hmm.
St. Joe's kind of was the more aggressive team. And as Grant said after the game, we just dug ourselves too deep a hole. You come all the way back, and I guarantee you, if Darion Williams gets that same shot, he's making it what 6, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. But he
Somewhere in
was
there. Yeah,
he,
for
he
sure.
was he was tired, and he had missed a few looks like that in the second half. But this is the burden he's going to bear now is that he's kind of the guy. He's the guy they want the ball in his hands at the end of games. And he had a 3 point look that was wide open with less than a minute to go. Didn't make that one, and but you just and I was proud of him for coming back and
Sure.
beating Syracuse the next night. Syracuse isn't great, but that's a road game essentially. And that was because you just did not want to be the team that left that deal 0-2.
Right.
And now you just need to root for Syracuse, you need to root for St. Joe's. And what ultimately the story here though is that you don't learn a lot about your team
That's funny.
in
That was
these.
going to be the next question is what did we learn
Yeah,
in New
you
York?
don't learn a lot about your team in these home games, these guarantee games.
Yeah.
You don't learn much about your team. Where you learn is when they go
Yeah.
play in these NCAA tournament environments or neutral site, and you go against some bigger, faster, all that stuff. And St. Joe's came into that game. They were not shooting the three ball very well at all. And then the Monroe kid, I think he just comes in and he just like made everything. So go figure. But this is what you're going to see night in, night out in the Big 12 Conference. And Grant will tell you it's about who can get their guys to play really hard
Yeah.
every night out. But you'll get you get Northern Colorado the day after Thanksgiving this
Mhm.
week. Next week is going to be DePaul and then Texas A&M, and you'll learn more in
Sure.
those games, I think. Even though DePaul is a home game, Chris Holtmann, the former Ohio State coach that was fired, took that job. Many people were like, what are you taking
What are you
that job
doing? Yeah.
for? But last time I saw they were 3-0. I don't know if they've played any since. And Texas A&M obviously is going to be a handful. They went to UCF and lost, but they're going to be very, very good. And that's going to be a game that I think you can sink your teeth into right there on that Sunday in Fort Worth coming up in, I don't know, depending on when you're listening this week and a half.
Meteor is what the basketball schedule is. DePaul now 5-0, so they've
Okay, there you go.
gotten off to a good start. Don't think they played a whole lot, but yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to over the next week, 2 weeks, in football and basketball. So hopefully you can get another win, and we'll be talking on the other side of that, talking maybe an Orlando trip or a Houston game against a pretty good SEC team or something like that when we start to look at those bowl projections. But number one, you got to win against West Virginia to get into those conversations. So level,
Yeah, and
go.
I don't pretend to know where you're going to end up going bowling. It's going to be a jumbled up mess.
Sure it
And for
is.
people that are curious and you start looking at all that stuff, anybody that came from the Pac-12
Hmm.
that is in your league now, like so really I guess that's just Arizona State and Colorado at this point. And Arizona State or Colorado, I guess theoretically could still end up being in the college football playoff. But because obviously Utah's not going to make it, Arizona's not going to make it, but one of those other ones is going to funnel into a Pac-12 bowl previously,
Yeah,
just like those Big Ten teams are that just joined the Big Ten. So they don't factor into one of the Big 12's bowl slots. Some of those were pre. That's just what they felt like was the cleanest way to do it for bowl scenarios and all those things. So yeah,
right.
we'll see. But I just would prefer an eighth win on Saturday. Happy Thanksgiving and all that stuff, and appreciate the time. Thanks to Choice Woodman for hosting this. Thanks to Cantex Roofing and all that. We'll see you at the arena. We'll see you at the stadium. Don't eat too much turkey, and but get an extra piece of pie, man. You deserve it.
Always,
You deserve it.
always. Level, thankful for you. Good stuff as always. That is Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. It has been the Ask Level podcast brought to you by Double T 97.3. Happy Thanksgiving.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.